You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Branford Planning Zoning Commission order. It is Thursday, October 5th, 2023. We'll call this meeting to order. Introduce members of the commission and staff. Starting with Fred Russo. Fred, are you here?
Fred Russo, present.
Joe Bayuso. Joe, are you here?
Bayuso, present.
Thank you, Joe. Marcy Pelusi. Marcy, are you here?
Marcy's here.
Thank you, Marcy. Massimo Liguri. Massimo, you here? Massimo, I think you're muted.
Massimo's here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sharon Hutner. Sharon, you're here?
Sharon Hutner's here.
Thank you, Sharon. Our staff this evening is our town planner, Harry Smith. Harry, you're here?
I am here.
And our assistant planner, Evan Brining. Evan, you're here?
Here.
And our clerk recording secretary lurking in the background is Michelle Martin. I am Chuck Anders, chair. I'll ask our secretary to read the notice of public hearings.
Legal notice, Town of Branford. Fred Russo. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, October 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. by remote technology to consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the Commission's meeting agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Application 23-8.7, Special Exception Modification in Coastal Site Plan for previous Section 6.8, grading within 100 feet of a critical coastal resource, located at 18-19 Etzel Road. Vincent Federico applicant, Jennifer Federico owner. Application 23-8.9, special exception for an accessory apartment located at 35 Bayberry Lane. Judy Nezowitzki, applicant and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies are on file in the Planning and Zoning Commission office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, Branford, Connecticut 06405. Written communications may be sent to the above address or to Planning and Zoning at branford-ct.gov. Branford Planning and Zoning Commission, C. Andres, chairperson.
Chuck Anders, thank you, Fred. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings. That is the applicant. Sharing, you can check with Evan. After the applicant goes, we allow for public comment. And as to how you do that, I'm going to ask Evan to explain that in a moment. And following the public comment, we turn it back to the applicant and to respond to any public comment, also answer any questions by the commission. I forgot to mention that before we open up the public comment, we typically hear a summary of a staff report and have a spot for questions and comments from commission members. So with that, Evan, can you explain for the record how the public can participate once that time has come?
Sure. If you'd like to participate in the public hearing, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a reactions button. You can select that. From there, you can select raise hand to indicate that you would like to comment or ask any questions. You can also type into the chat that you'd like to speak. Or wave your hand in front of the camera. I'll try to catch you. If you're dialing in, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And we ask that everybody please state their name at the beginning of their comment or question.
Chuck Anders, thank you, Evan. With that, we'll move to our agenda. Our first three public hearing items are continuations of public hearings. That's the Cherry Hill Estates, 26 Cherry Hill Road. That's the PDD master plan modification, special exception modification, and site plan modification for multifamily residential at that site. This was a public hearing that we opened on September 7th. We continued it in part because the town center revitalization needed to weigh in on the proposed changes. And my understanding is that they met, but they also are continuing their hearing. They haven't made a recommendation to us yet. So I believe the applicant's requesting that we continue this to our October 19th meeting. Harry, is that correct?
Harry Smith, town planner. Basically, yeah, the town center board was looking for some additional information in terms of revised architectural plans. There hasn't been time apparently to prepare that, and the applicant has offered a time extension to allow the commission to continue these public hearings to the October 19th meeting.
Okay.
And also the town center board is going to meet next Wednesday, the 11th, to consider it again.
Chuck and Share. Thank you, Harry. So if you're here on that one, we're going to continue this one, the Cherry Hill Estates one, to our next meeting, which is October 19th, also at 7 p.m. via Zoom, same Zoom address. So those matters are continued. That takes us now to item number 4, which is Lakeview Center Associates LLC, care of DeLorean Lease Management, applicant owner. That's 249-251 West Main Street. This is a special exception for the tenant signage. Harry or Evan, can you want to bring us up to date on what's going on with that?
The applicant granted an extension to the October 19th meeting and asked to continue.
Okay, so this one also, I guess, this applicant has made a request to continue. So that's what we'll do. If you're here on that one, that's item number 4. That's the special exception, but it's a signage at the Lakeview Center. And so that matter will be continued to our October 19th meeting, again, 7 p.m. via Zoom, same Zoom address. That brings us then to item number 5, which is the Town of Branford, here, First Selectman Jane Cosgrove, applicant owner, 185 Damascus Road. This is the special exception modification, the Walsh Intermediate School athletic field renovation improvements. And we opened that at our last hearing, and there are a number of questions and comments, and we continued it. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Harry, could you make okay, sorry.
They already have, yeah.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can, Dominic. Just before I start, I've made you a co-host as well as Alex Paluzzi. I don't know if there's anyone else on the call you would like me to designate that way.
I think that's going to be it.
Okay.
I could start with a summation, or we could get into any kind of questions. We did make the full presentation last month. I could do a summary presentation if you like. I know there were some questions. We have submitted, I believe, answers to all the questions that were inquired about. They were listed in through the planning department, and I can share screen to show a graphic to start. I know a lot of the questions that we had were some concerns or some backup information both on the synthetic field and on the lights. They had to deal with PFAS and microplastics. I could do a little talk about that portion, and also there was some talk about some possible vegetation alternatives to control light trespass, and then understanding the foot candles for the lights as well. So with that, I'm going to share screen, and I think it's, let me see, is it this one? Tell me if you guys can see on your screen a picture of the graphic that we had. I'm going to be going between a couple of things. So if you want, just to refresh everybody's memory.
We can't see anything yet, Dominic.
How about
there
now?
we are. Got it now. Yep.
Sorry about that. It's been
That's
one of those days. All right. So this is the middle school is to the bottom of the screen over here. Damascus Road is to your right to reorient anybody. The existing softball field is right here. The two new fields. Again, this is a site improvement project for the middle school consisting of multiple both program and outdoor activity items. I don't think I have to get into it too much. From right to left, new accessible playground, accessible walkways, slight renovation to the softball field and right field, addition of lights for the softball field, the new basketball court that also doubles as accessible routes to different use areas, a secondary play court with some hard surface play areas, restroom facility, new set of swing sets, an accessible walkway that surrounds the 2 existing fields, which will be modified to synthetic fields, outdoor classroom, amphitheater over here, revision to the existing accessible walkway, outdoor educational overlook. The darkened areas here, 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 and here are new, basically, rain gardens. This one is actually a pollinator garden that can be used for educational and both environmental purposes, giving back the area around the existing fields to more of an environmental buffer. What I'll do is I'll touch on a couple of things. This would be a lighted sports fields on both, and that was where one of the questions came up. We'll touch on that in a second. One question came up about both PFAS and microplastics. The field itself is being built with a belt and suspenders to control migration of infill materials. The materials are certified to contain no PFAS, both the carpet and the infill materials. And then what we do to handle any sort of migration of that material is along the upper right-hand side of the actual field itself. We're providing a trench drain to capture any sort of movement off the field on the lower side of that before it gets into the system. And then we obviously, as a secondary catchment, those wetlands do double as a catchment to capture that. The rain gardens double before you get anything out into the actual wetlands themselves. Furthermore, it should be understood, there was a question that came up in a comment about the field drainage. We're actually improving it. If you look at the storm drainage calculations, we prepared a full report for this system. We actually improved the amount of runoff from this site and retain it under the field to have it let out or bleed out slowly over time. So there is not an inundation on the existing waterway that actually runs around this end of the field up here and actually exits to the north end side of the site underneath the culvert that runs under Damascus Road. Excuse me. One other item that was brought up of concern is, and we don't show it on this item, I'm gonna pivot to the plan set for a second. We did identify some trees along the access road, and there was a comment of if some trees could be added along this end. We have talks, or we're going to need to talk with Board of Education, but we don't see any reason why we couldn't add some trees along the parking area, which would serve a double purpose of controlling some of the light. But you'll see during our photometric review, the light actually ends before the existing parking lot. Any parking lot light that shadows out is from the existing parking lot and not from the foot candle determination. So we would be open to that as well. I will start looking at the photometrics, which we did present. Some people are concerned, and I'm going to zoom in here. These are lumens on the field itself, and you see all these zeros. Again, Damascus Road over here, existing parking lot. The trespass is very subtly into the parking lot. A lot of zeros on the secondary travel lane, and the ones would be absorbed into the existing light. Nothing along the upper road near the school. And then we've accentuated the property lines to show that there's not much really going on around the system. We've condensed all of that photometric light onto the actual fields themselves. The third element that we were going to talk to is the dark sky compliant. We are dark sky compliant. We've sent that information over to planning and zoning. I think we sent most of the information the next day or within the next couple of days after your last meeting to make sure it could get over to you in time. It talks about all the different characterizations of how we identify this field within the 2 fields to make sure that we are dark sky compliant, full cutoff in terms of complying with that industry standard. With that, I think we talked about that piece. I think that's everything that we wanted to address, and we look forward to comments either from the community or from your board moving forward. We appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. I didn't mention my name is Dominic Soltrud. I'm with BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut is the address. Apologies for that oversight.
Chuck Andershire, thank you. Evan, do you want to review any updates to your staff report?
Yeah, sure. I think Dominic touched on most of the issues that were discussed at the last meeting, but I'll get started with the existing vegetation there. They stated that they had planned to remove 12 trees, or I'm sorry, 17 trees, and planned to propose 12 new ones to be planted. And as he said, we recommend the planting of the trees next to the parking lot and in between the parking lot and the proposed softball field, for the species chosen for the purpose of screening the neighbors across the street from any light or as much light as possible. And we advise that the superintendent of schools have some input just in case they would like some specific trees to be planted or in specific locations. Onto the lighting that Mr. Seltruda had discussed. They had talked about the proposed foot candle levels and the requirements for safety. They had the gentleman from Musco join us at the last public hearing, as well as the proposed uplighting was being installed for the purposes of the student athletes or the athletes being able to track those balls in the air during night games or something like that. They provided that photometric plan showing that the foot candles will not go over the property lines, or at least they'll be zero at the property line. I wanted to ask the commission to make a determination tonight. Section 6.7D4. It reads, lighting used for outdoor sports fields and outdoor playing courts must be, to the greatest extent possible, contained to the field or court property area. All exterior light-filled fixtures shall be shielded, installed, or aimed so that no direct light is visible from within the property boundaries of all surrounding properties. We'd like you guys to interpret if that would essentially relieve sports lighting from strictly conforming with Section 6.7C, which is where all of our lighting standards for outdoor lighting are. The applicant had sent over to us, which we circulated to the commission, 3 tables from the Illuminating Engineer Society of North America's Lighting Handbook. These included the criteria used to classify outdoor sports lighting into 4 categories based on player skill level and number of spectators, as well as 2 tables from this handbook showing the recommended illuminance levels for specific sports, including football, field hockey, and soccer. We would like the applicant to maybe bring those up again and just show us why those levels were appropriate. Just briefly, I know they went over the lighting information just now. That's it for the lighting regulations. Concerning the drainage and stormwater control, we received letters from the neighbors, one of which was asking questions about if the proposed drainage system was adequate and if any of the neighboring properties might be affected by the raising of the turf field area. So we had referred that letter to the town engineer. They provided some comments back to us that said there would be a reduction in the calculated volume and peak flows to the wetland system. So I think it would essentially be less risk of water going on to those neighboring properties. Staff recommends the following findings and conditions. And we did make some amendments actually today, circulated those to the commission or the applicant. Just bring my screen up here. All right, can anyone see this? Like me to zoom in or anything?
That's good.
So for the first finding, this is actually the interpretation or the discussion from the commission tonight will determine what the first finding should be used. We have two options. The first of which is for non-compliant lights for safety purposes. I modeled this after a finding from the Amazon application where the commission determined that the light levels for safety reasons were appropriate and that that facility didn't fit into any of the specific areas listed in our appendices. This finding reads that the commission finds, based on the materials presented by the applicant with respect to compliance with section 6.7, that the proposed foot candle luminance levels shown on the plans entitled Site Utility Lighting Layout on sheet SU3 and SU4, or SU3 and SU4, as well as the proposed uplighting shall be permitted when such lighting is exclusively for the purpose of outdoor sports events that require such lighting. Should the commission determine that that section of the code, section 6.7D, however, that we weren't sure if that necessarily meant that sports lighting has a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to the specific standards of section 6.C. So I wrote this finding that the commission finds that section 6.7D4 would relieve lighting used for outdoor sports fields and outdoor playing courts from meeting the specific requirements of section 6.7C, so long as the proposed lighting is A, to the greatest extent possible, contained to the field/court property area, B, all exterior light fixtures are shielded, installed, or aimed so that no direct light is visible from within the property boundary or from the boundaries of the surrounding properties, and C, exclusively for the purposes of outdoor sports events that require such lighting. The second finding is that the commission finds that the applicant meets the special exception criteria, and on to our proposed conditions. Condition 1, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the following shall be satisfied to addressed to the satisfaction of the town planner or his designee, with consultation from the superintendent of schools. The applicant shall amend sheet LL1 entitled Landscaping Plan to show the planting of a line of at least 5 native trees across the length of the parking lot adjacent to the softball field and Damascus Road. The species shall be chosen for the purpose of screening the residents across the road from the proposed field lighting. Condition 2, prior to the start of construction, the following shall be completed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. Erosion control measures shall be installed and maintained throughout the construction. Condition 3, all sports field court lighting shall be turned off after use or no later than 1 hour after the end of the sporting events and used solely for sporting events. Condition 4, as may be directed by the CEO, town planner, or his designee, necessary measures to control any dust generated by fill into the site or movement of earth material on the site shall be implemented, and any additional measures to control soil erosion determined to be necessary during construction. And condition 5 is that all conditions of the previous approvals shall remain in full force and effect.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Evan. Questions, comments from commission members before we open it up to the public?
Chuck, Fred Russo.
Fred.
I have 2 questions to Dominic. Dominic, you mentioned, and you don't have to get into deep detail, but you mentioned that the town did a survey or study of some sort of the ball fields in Branford. And I was just wondering, as it relates to this project, are there any other fields that are using either your product or similar product as opposed to natural grass fields? Yeah, Dominic, unmute yourself. Yeah. He's got to be unmuted.
Yep, sorry about that. The other synthetic turf surface that you have in town as a public use is at the high school. This will be similar. It'll be a newer technology to that. We have to go non-proprietary because it is a public bid if this project does go out on the street, but we're looking for what's called a dual element turf system, which is going to be a little bit different than the high school in terms of the strands. We're also looking at the pile height of this to be a little bit different. That's exclusively football and soccer. We also are going to accommodate field hockey on here. but the infill will be similar to that of the high school. The mixture may vary a little bit. It will be a rubber sand mixture that's going to be that infill. As your question on the study is ongoing. The needs analysis and the demographic analysis were performed May, June of this year for that study. The final public informational meeting is actually next week. It is on a website devoted to the study of athletic fields. It should be reminded that this actual site is not just for the athletic fields, but is also for site programming for the school as well. We looked at it a little bit differently. This is a feeder for your high school, so we obviously devoted it to more academic as well as athletic.
One last question, Dominic.
Yep.
So with the study, are there any other potential fields in the town, school fields or just regular athletic fields that would either use your process, or are we limited to just the high school at this point, and not high school, and the middle school?
But the high school rose to the top in terms of recommendations for this implementation. There could be other flexible park areas where it could be utilized, but our study has a holistic approach to balance both natural turf and synthetic throughout the district. The study showed that you were in need of at least 1.12, so it's almost 1 to 2 more synthetic fields to balance your use overall. That use is not only for the schools, but for the entire town as a whole. In terms of synthetic surfacing, that doesn't mean what we always recommend, and this is kind of something we looked at. Whenever you do one, you really want to do two, so you can have some rest on one field. So this is going to benefit both the high school level and this field, whereas maybe a practice can occur here as opposed to the high school. Primarily, we have to also keep in mind this is a middle school first and foremost. So anything that goes on the site, the middle school takes precedent over that.
One final question. If you had to make a comparison in terms of maintenance, I don't know what the cost would be, but in terms of maintenance, is there a significant difference in maintaining a field of grass and being fertilized and all, as opposed to a field that you're proposing?
Well, first of all, I propose natural and synthetic. I think it's a wash sometimes, with a little bit of the benefit back to a synthetic field in terms of maybe the short-term increase in expenses there, but the long-term can be negligible. You don't have to mow. The leveling courses, we show a pretty aggressive schedule of maintenance in terms of making sure you stay up on that. If you don't stay up on it, it could be more cost prohibitive, but in the long run, an artificial turf field should yield less maintenance in the overall. It's also less of a stressor on utilizing, even if you're using natural additives for both pest herbicide control. I'm talking organic additives, influx of infield dirt, migration of infield dirt and clay, things along those lines. There is maintenance involved in both of them, but long term, we feel the maintenance level is lower on a synthetic field.
Thank you, Dominic.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Let me just ask a general question about the artificial turf question. I understand you presented a couple studies, something from DEP as well as something from the manufacturer, that my quick review seemed to say that the real methyl ethyl bad stuff, the bad chemical, the toxic stuff, is not been found to be in what you guys are proposing.
Sure.
But that suggests to me that, well, maybe there's some out there that do have that. I mean, do you know, in your just awareness of the industry, that are there some good versus bad synthetic fields, or are they all lumped together?
We try to stay up on all trends. Our company is just like a lot of the other companies that do this type of design work in the state of Connecticut. We're members of the American Sports Builders Association as well as other groups, and we stay up on where the items are pivoting. If you guys know anything about educational resources, you know that something we want to try to forecast to make sure anything that's done on the educational side is safe. We know that it went from looking at friable materials in the schools to mastics and things along those lines. When it comes to the carpets, What we bake into our specifications is before anything comes on site, they have to prove to us, no matter what it is, which carpet manufacturer, they're going to prove to us that the testing is done. We require it in our specifications, both for the carpet and the infill. The way these are designed, we actually go the extra mile. Anything that comes in subsurface, we're going to require, since it is a school site, the testing is done to make sure that we're not bringing anything onto the site that can be adverse. So in the terms of the testing and delivery method, 5-6 years ago, there was a question, and a lot of it gets brought up in the media, of PFAS or the crumb rubber. Those testings were done independently by, unfortunately, the manufacturers, and some people didn't believe that. So then we looked to DEP and national standards to do those testings. And then what we do is we design for a belt and suspenders type of design, where we take and say, okay, we're going to do the testing on all the materials that comes in. Same thing with goalposts and your netting, things along those lines. So we make sure we're not bringing anything that's going to be a hindrance to the end users onto the site. But then we also try to design the systems to make sure if we do have a problem, we can contain it in terms of making sure we can contain it either within the field or within a drain system or within that secondary buffer that we're designing around the field itself. We do that both for the environmental factors, but also to make sure that we've got some checks and balances built into the system. Like I said, we built a trench drain system on one side of this field, which is absolutely unnecessary. It is there for the sole purpose of capturing any sort of migration of any sort of materials. We felt it necessary, and we designed it into the system. It's got a deep sump on one side, so we can push that material in. It can be harvested and brought back onto the field or disposed of. In terms of the industry, they're very open. Like I said, I think you've got one from one source. We know 3 or 4 different carpet manufacturers. They're all going to attest to the fact that they don't use it both in their material processing, but also in the actual facilities that they work in. So that's the other check and balance. And again, our big check and balance is we can get assurances from those manufacturers, but we want the testing before the stuff comes on site. And that's written into our specification to make sure that we're not getting anything brought onto the site that we don't need.
Thank you. Are there other questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public?
By you, so I got a little question about a little more clarification on the lighting. Can you tell me how tall the poles are and about how many poles you're going to have around? And I assume they're going to be around the outside diameter of the fields, not in the middle.
Yep.
I would assume. A little more clarification.
I will go over the pole placements, and then I'm going to introduce a member of my staff who's sitting next to me. He'll introduce himself. He'll get into that second portion that Evan had brought up about the photometrics and the uplighting. But I'm going to mark something up on this screen real quick, if you don't mind. I'm going to mark. Let me do a different color so you guys can see it. I'm going to mark the locations on this screen of the poles. Kind of quickly.
Can you share your screen, please?
Yep. Sorry about that. I'm going to mark them first so you guys can see them, and then I'm going to share screen. Okay, share screen, screen 2, share. All right, so it's very muddy because I'm trying to do this with a program that doesn't really draw very well. But I'm just kind of haloing. Okay. So there are 6 locations, and I'm going to call them out. There's 2 locations down here on the big field and 2 locations up here. There's 2 locations in the middle. There's 2 locations down either line of the softball field and 1 straightaway center. All right. And I got to get this right. This is why I've got my backup here with me right now. The 2 poles on the end are the 2 tallest poles. Those are 100-footers here and here. The poles over here and here and here and here. Okay, it's 80 footers. Okay. And then the poles on the softball field, they drop down to 60 foot. See, I got it right. Sometimes I don't get the pole locations right. So we had Musco here last week, if you were on the call last week, and they went through the photometrics. We're going to go through, since we called out where the pole locations are. Again, 100 footers down the middle, 80s on the end because of the double field, 60s around the softball field. And we'll talk a little bit about the photometrics at the property line, and then we're going to go into the foot candle determination on the fields themselves. that you kind of come in and talk about that. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna transfer over to Josh Wheeler from my office.
Josh Wheeler, BR Companies. So with the photometrics, even with the tall light poles, we're still hitting 0 by the time we get to the property lines here. So the property line's running right along here and right along the road. And at all points, we're at 0 when we hit that property line with the lumens. When we go to the standards that the IESNA have put forth, we came up with a few different classes, and they have a typo in their book, unfortunately. This is actually class 3. But for sports clubs and high school sports, the majority of the time we want to fall within that class 3 for football and soccer. For softball, we actually want to be in the class 4. It lowers the lumen level a little bit. And as we get down into the charts, they list out the suggested lumen level at a 3-foot height on the fields. And for football, it's a 30 lumen level. And for soccer, it's a 30 lumen level. And that's an average across the entire field. So you'll see in our plan, there are some areas that are 30, there's some areas that are 25, and it just varies based on where we are. But overall, the average is 30 lumens. And then for the baseball / softball, the infield wants to be around the 30 lumen level, and the outfield wants to be around the 20 lumen level. And we were able to do that with these fields here.
Excuse me, Harry Smith, just want to interrupt you. You mean foot candles, not lumens, right?
Sorry, foot candles, yes.
Okay.
Those difference.
Yeah.
But what you would imagine is happening is what we want. So in terms of a sport like football, it's a little bit more elevated because of that high ball height and that high passing range. And then on the softball, obviously the infield is higher than the outfield because of the speed and bat speed range coming off the bat. Whereas the outfield, there's a couple of seconds difference before that ball migrates to the outfield. So that's where those differentiations have happened. And if you look at the patterns that you see on the screen in terms of those light levels, this is a lot more consistent with the new technology than with the past technology. And it really comes down to the aiming of those lights where they can cut those lights into these light levels. And these are, on the low side. On a lot of these, you can kind of see how we fall away in some areas and build up in areas. Obviously, light being what it is going to be more concentrated near the heads as we aim them. But when they aim them, they can have some fall away on the corners so they can affect where that developmental play is going to occur on that field. And the beauty of the LED is they can cut it off right away once we get outside that field of play. So I know you just asked for the light pole locations. I know Evan had mentioned it earlier. Evan, I wanted to make sure we kind of answered the other question as well moving forward, so it's on the record.
Yeah, you guys answered all my questions.
Checking it, Chair. Joe Viuso, you had asked the height question, I think. Is there any follow-up you have, Joe?
That's my concern, is the height. These poles, and I don't even know if you have a remedy to this situation, but these poles are so high above the tree line that even though you're cutting off the lights, shielding these lights to stay within the property lines, these lights are so high up in the air. I'm wondering if anybody in the area are going to be affected by those lights being up so high.
If you imagine the tree canopy that surrounds the actual fields themselves, the average height of that canopy right now is anywhere between 40 and 60, depending on the aspects around that. So some of them will be a little bit higher. However, those actual heads they're pointing away from most elements and they're pointing downward. We do have the two uplights, but they're pointing towards the fields or the uplight areas, and those are only lit at a lot less lumen. I think we brought up that one, and those were at what, 60 foot or 70 foot? The picture he sent us from Musco.
No, those were 80s.
Those are 80s. So I can bring up that picture again we showed last week if you guys want. Was that new Milford? Bear with me one second. So those are 80-foot poles, and you can see the array behind the field itself and how much light is kicked from behind. Now, then it comes down to angles. We don't have a lot of houses that are within 200 feet with an unobstructed view. Obviously, the ones in front, we're going to do some trees to inform that view. But a lot of them, these are 80s, so you're only going an extra 20 feet. And you can see this is on a perfect night. Obviously, if you have fog out there, you're going to get some differential, but if it's foggy out, we're probably not going to be playing too much sports on a thick fog night. You will get a little bit of radiation out from that. And this was posted, I believe, last week as well.
I know what you're saying, because I'm dealing with an issue very similar to what you're putting up over here. So I have a little knowledge of lighting bleeding over into somebody's property, even though building bulbs are so bright. See the bulbs, but they may not be on outside the property line, but those bulbs are just flaring.
Mm-hmm. Well, if it's in Branford, these bulbs have not been used in Branford yet. Yeah, these are directional full cutoff, so they're not going to be signalized towards any point source except for on the field.
I don't know if there's a problem that could be solved. That's what I'm getting at. You're in a situation where those bulbs are up there and they're shielding as best you can, but they're still up in the air, 100, well above the tree line, well above, far away. So I don't know if there's a way you can solve that. I don't think you could. I don't think.
Chuck and Chair. Thanks, Joe. Any other questions, comments from anyone before we open up the public?
Yeah, Massimo Logori here. If I can, I think I'm just gonna make a comment. I don't think I have any direct questions to add, but the technology of this new lighting, and from what I've seen here on my screen, is very directional. I played sports all my life. My kids played sports. We've been down to this field, and first and foremost, I think the most important issues goes down to the safety of our children while they're playing sports. And this field particularly definitely has its issues, and it's had its issues for a long time. So what's going on here to me is a significant improvement for the safety of our children, for the town of Branford and other towns that come in to play against or with our children in this town. The lighting is also significant for the safety of children, and in my perspective, I put that way ahead of any type of glare. This is not old school lighting. These lights don't shine outside their directional path. It does have a glare towards the sky because of the brightness that's coming out, but it's only because it's just a lighter area because of the lights. So I don't really see it giving, which is a concern to me, the neighbors. But I don't see it giving neighbors any problem, especially that they're considering putting a buffer of trees. I think it's extremely safe for the kids to have the proper lighting, and this seems right on. I just that's my comment. I think that this area was in need of a new ball field. I think it gets the children very excited to go out and run around more and play more and be more attracted to sports, and it's something that we shouldn't take lightly. I think anything that attracts kids to get some exercise and become a team and a part of something and, belong to something is extremely important. And when there's new fields out there, I think that that's also, something that's very attractive to children. I really think that the project is being, catered to very professionally. It seems like, the checks are being marked, and That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Rep. Candace Chair, thank you. Massimo, Marcy.
Yeah, Marcy Paluzzi here. Dominic, I probably missed this in your presentation, but are these lights on timers, and when would they be turned off? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's going to be worked out. Basically, there is a condition that we agreed to on approval that an hour after a sporting event or earlier than that must go. We can turn lights off. There will be timers, and there will be a schedule for the lighting. Also, we do a thing called walking it out with these lights, where the package will start to dim down to basically walk people out. You know, turn lights off. There's a whole package that must go. Offers we always recommend. It's called walking out. So if you imagine if the exit is down on this side of the field, you know, these dim down first, which forces people up. It's time to go. Then these turn off. We don't just shut them down. We can go dim a little bit. LED technology allows us to go to like 60% and then move people out of the field area. And then, you know, we would obviously run this. It's first and foremost a school zone. So sometimes this time of year, the lights may have to come on at like 6:30, depending on the length of days, depending on the activities. But if there's no activities planned for a night, there's no reason why it can't be managed to have it off when there's no athletic facility fields going on. And within that question, it should be also brought up that this field right now is utilizing temporary light on a very occasional basis, especially this time of year. Pee Wee football runs generator-based light towers, which spill light up into the sky, sideways, down, everywhere, and provide a lot of, you know, obviously omnidirectional because you can't get the height on those towers. Anyone who's taken a high school geometry class understands that when we go higher and we can directional the heads downward, we're closer to an indoor situation where the light's shining straight down, and you're lower on the spectrum. And pushing that light side to side, you're going to trespass that light a lot easier across the field. So it's not the fact that it's new to this site. They are currently utilizing lights on this site in a temporary fashion.
Okay, Chair, thank you. Any other questions, comments from anyone before you, commission members or staff, before we open up the public?
Chuck, I've got a couple of questions.
Yep.
One is, what's the correlated color temperature of the lights? Do they vary, or is it?
Question. That I'd have to go look up. Like I said, that's why we wanted those Musco questions answered last week, and we're going to get that question. If you have another question, we're researching that on our checks.
Okay.
I know it's it's more on the cooler side than the warmer because the cooler cuts through the dimensions a lot faster on the prism. So you want to make sure that we're not going too warm, but obviously we want to make it so it's the safest colors out there. 5,700. 5,700.
Okay. Degrees Kelvin. Yeah.
Yep.
I thought, and I can't imagine, to Joe Vayuso's question, that to get the spread of light, any kind of shielding is not going to be possible to use. I can't imagine that's possible given how much you want to spread the light out, right?
Well, and it's also
you aim it pretty carefully.
The dynamics of the prisms on the LEDs. Shields are used when you use them like old school metal halide or sodium vapor, or when you have a really, really tense area where you have to cut off. The way they set these lights in place, just so you understand, is they put the foot. Get away from the arrow here. Hold on a second. They install the footings first, and then the towers get slid together on the ground, and this whole thing is hoisted in the air and pushed down. And then there's a laser that sits on the top of all these. These are all timed at the factory, and then they're honed to points on the actual field. So when these are twisted into place, if you imagine like a big giant sail, so to speak, they start twisting this. So they know before it even gets on the ground. And I think you might not be able to see this on screen. There's an automobile right here. This little, and this is about 40 feet off this. This is a parking lot right here. Yeah. On this side of this picture. So when they focus these nowadays, they're really dialed in that they don't need to have a lot of shielding built into them because the prisms are set up on those diodes for the LEDs so such that they're aimed a lot differently than old school lighting.
Yeah. And the last question I had was about the field itself and kind of maintenance of cleaning, that kind of thing. And I don't know if anyone can describe what you'd be doing to any kind of whatever accident. I mean, I imagine there'll be signs up there so people don't walk their dogs out in the field and things like that. But
Yeah, we've
even
talked.
during the sporting event, how do you clean up?
Correct. I mean,
Whatever.
there's long-term maintenance and short-term maintenance on a field. Obviously, the biggest thing is making sure that you achieve proper pile height. When we talk about pile height, if you imagine when you have your lawn, you have a certain length on your lawn before the soil is encountered. Same thing on an artificial turf system. So that pile height has to be checked on a daily, weekly basis, and it's just like it's a lot easier. There's a special machine that'll be purchased as part of this field that can be utilized both at the high school and at this location for that leveling of that pile height. And in terms of long-term maintenance on the field, there'll be checks and balances for seaming, line work, things along those lines, taking a look at the actual carpet itself to make sure that there's any wear and tear. If there's an accident, per se, a dog or an injury where we have a bloodborne pathogen type industry where you've got bodily fluids on the field, the solution there is heavy irrigation of water. We don't want, and it's not a bad thing if some other means, your emergency responders are going to want to coat an area that has been soaked in blood with bleach or bleach solution. We would say irrigate the area, shut it down, utilize a lot of water. The water is going to move pretty quickly through here and get into the subbase rather easily.
There's also specialty cleaning products that come along with the fields that won't degrade the actual material itself. So it'll break down any of the organics or toxins, but it won't degrade the actual plastic of the synthetic. So
correct.
Yeah. And those are biodegradable, those products?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And I imagine all this is spelled out in protocols for how it's supposed to be managed and everything else.
Yeah, there's a full operations and maintenance manual that'll go with the field, and it has some pretty strict outlines on how to follow it and what to do and the grooming tools and techniques that are used. And there's training that comes along with it for somebody to go and learn how to use the machinery and how it's used on that field. So
correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chuck and Sharon, any other questions, comments from commission members or staff before we open it up? Hearing none, then let's open it up to the public. Does any member of the public wish to comment? I guess we need to end the screen sharing.
Okay, I can stop here. There you go.
Evan?
Looks like we do have somebody, but just before Mr. Post gets started, down at the bottom of your screen, the reactions button, you can select raise hand, or you can type it in the chat that you'd like to participate. Mr. Post? Dr. Post? Sorry about that.
Sure, yeah. Thank you for this. And let me first start off as I sent in a letter with 7 points of concern, which to me still need to and hopefully will be, you can guarantee me will be addressed in response to me, because I think they're all valid points. If you take and look at that picture that was shown with the photometrics and the house that's immediately to the right of the baseball field, that's my house. There are a lot of houses on my street. There's no tree buffer. There's one I've created, which is nowhere as high as 60 feet. Right now, the parking lot lights shine into my home. So if you're telling me that there will not be an issue of ballpark lights, in the ball field, I find that hard to believe. And I just need the guarantee that won't be a problem. And so I'm sure you can provide the specifics. I'm not an engineer. If you want to talk about infectious diseases, I can talk to you about those, but I can't talk to you necessarily about all the details of the engineering and all the plans you've submitted. As I said, this is great. This is wonderful. Outdoor education, more facilities, all great. But I don't know if you've really considered, in my points, the larger community, and that's the community 100 feet from at least the ball field and that parking lot. I'm glad you're going to add trees. That's a great idea, but they really need to be tall trees, and there need to be enough of them so that you can hopefully minimize any of the effect. When you look out in the distance at lights, for instance, if you're driving along and you're looking at the lights in a parking lot, they're there, they're evident. They may not be shining in your eyes, but they're there. And so that they're not there now. What we face is the parking lot lights right now, which are there. So if you're adding to them, just know that you're adding to a situation, a visible situation, one that is currently affecting us. But obviously we knew this, and we've got blackout blinds on that side of the house. So that we don't get the lights shining into our house. So if you can take care of that, that's great. But just go back to my points. One in particular is if you raise the fields, I really want assurance. I know you made the comment about the engineers talked about less risk of water. I'm not quite sure what that means. I did point out in a brief comment in the previous meeting that there is at least 2 or 3 or 4 feet of water in the stream that's currently used to move water away from across Damascus, over or under Damascus, and behind. I guess it's Corbin Lane, between Corbin Lane and Patrick Lane. That shouldn't be affected. There's a habitat there. There are rabbits. There are all sorts of other animals that live there. That should be a consideration and a concern. If you reduce the water, the trees die, the plants die. If you've increased the water, you're creating a wet basement for me. So you need to consider that. And we are 100 feet away. That's why we got a letter. So I really would like that to be addressed and considered. The other thing is, as I said, it's an ecological habitat that we're dealing with. So any of the effects, if you do a systematic review and you look up, Green Building Alliance as well as NIH and other places, it's a draw on artificial turf. You can't say for sure that there isn't any negatives. In fact, at least NIH said there's nothing conclusive or inconclusive. So it's teetering on knowing when science is compiled, whether in fact the turf will eventually lead to more than PFAS, to polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and other kinds of things that are associated with them, I guess, depending on the substance. So what I'm saying there is that also needs to be something I would like to see to make sure that kind of runoff that is going to be removed. And there's I don't understand how that drainage is not going to go off into the current waterways there unless it's just being emptied into the sewer. But I wanted assurance that amount of water that comes behind my house and continues between the 2 streets all the way behind Patrick won't be affected. I think that's a reasonable assurance. The lighting part of it, as I said, going back to that point, there's a third point that I made. I do have a concern because right now we do see the lights from the parking lot. So if these lights are taller and visible, then there is a concern from those who are living 100 feet within 100 feet away from the ballpark, the softball field. So I want assurance that won't be a problem, especially if there's not a control or in terms of the use of the fields and the use of the lights. And then a lot of this, and underlying a lot of this, is considering this is going to attract more and more use. It's fantastic to have these amenities, but at the same time, more use means more use of the amenities, more of the potential for lights issues. Everything from, as I've said, more traffic, which, by the way, now doesn't follow any speed limit. More parking, more noise, more attraction, as you can imagine, a very popular ball field to have. So I wanted assurance that somehow or another that's been addressed, and that part of this environmental study has been addressed. And I know, one of the points I made, again, you've mentioned adding trees. I think that's great. I think you really need to consider not just a few, but a very big concerted effort to block the view from my side of Damascus Road, which is direct And if you show that photometric one, you see my house. It's there. It's in your picture. It's that close. So I do have a concern of that. And the idea of construction, when that'll occur, what will be done to mitigate all of that for those of us who are directly across from that, from construction, when it'll occur, when it will be confined, or how it will be confined in terms of the interruption and the implications for those who are living right up against the school. I think that needs to be considered as well. The increase of activities, noise, presence of people, whether in fact is going to be security. Last night, people hanging out in the parking lot across the street, 2 a.m, loud, could hear them. If I can hear them now, what's this going to bring? So I think these are all relevant. And for many people, here, it's fantastic. Great to have this ability for our town and township and our students. But then there's the reality of those of us who are butt up against it. So I think all of the points I raised, my request is that they one by one be addressed in a response to me, and so that I can have assurance that my home and even its value won't be impacted by increasing the access to and the enlargement and the enhancements here.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Post. I note, I believe we did send your letter to the applicant, and we will ask him to respond to your points when he gets to his response. So thank you. Other members of the public wish to comment? Hearing none. Evan, there isn't anyone else, right?
I do not see any.
Okay. Mr. Keltruda, I believe we did send you the response, and if you could comment, there are maybe
I can comment on these, and hopefully I hit them all, and we appreciate the feedback from a neighboring property owner. If I fail to address anything, I think he'll kind of let me know. There's a couple of responses. I'm going to read through them and hopefully address each one of them. In terms of there's 7 items on the list. And I'm going to just read them a little bit just because I want to make sure, because there was a lot here. So I want to make sure I don't miss anything. He talked about plans to address natural environment impacts on water soil management plants in the area. Was missing is the impacts on community natural environment around the redevelopment, particularly for those within 100 feet. I think this is more of a statement, number one. And if there's something in there that I missed on that, it's kind of a statement that leads up to item number 2. Kindly let me know, sir, and I'll address it. No part of the plan covers impacts of the rising level of fields for use of the artificial turf field. This is a misunderstanding. What I want to do is I'm going to bring up some exhibits while we're talking to that. And that's number 2 is about the water flow and the hydraulics, I believe, and we'll talk to that. I'm going to share screen for a second. Hold on a second. Get over here. Share screen 2, share. And I'm going to go to the plan set. One misunderstanding, and I'm going to pull this over. Gotta grab this. Bear with me one second. I'm going to go up a little ways to bring up the grading plan. Just so there's an understanding of how we're grading the site. Bear with me one second. Let me find it. This one. This one, no. They're very small, and my eyes are not as good as they were a couple of years back. So just bear with me one second till I find it. What? SP, C, word. It's disappearing on me. Let's let me see. Here it is. Okay. So one thing that we should clarify for everybody is the water won't be going away. It's that time of concentration for that flow to flow into, and I'm going to keep this in layman's terms. The engineer supported it. The water will eventually make it into the same system that runs over on this part of the site, so to speak. The gentleman who just spoke, his house is right over here near the end in Francis, right over this area. The The water is designed to slow that flow through the system. It will eventually make it out there. It won't have any negative effect on the bugs and bunnies and the habitat. What we don't want to do is accelerate the flow into that system or stymie that flow. So the water that falls on the site today will still make it out there. What we're trying to do is some of that volume will go down below the surface and then migrate into that system. It'll be in basically what's called infiltration. It'll infiltrate into the soil and make its way naturally to that system. Some of it will be overland flow. What we're trying to prevent is that inundation he discussed, which is flooding basements, things along those lines. But we also want to be sensitive to the ecology of the area and make sure that that water is both cooled and slowed as it enters that system, so the habitat has time for recovery during storm events. So that covers number 2. The plans for lighting of the fields, increased presence of utilities. We agree with them. We're trying with some condensed areas of lighting. We were not responsible for the lights on the parking lot. I agree with him. His house is here. We can bring up the photometrics. You know, we'll put in some buffer zones to him so he doesn't have a direct view of those lights. We don't show the parking lot that's an existing condition and what those light levels produce. We don't add to that light level in the parking lot. We can obviously buffer that with some vegetation to try to soften that look and feel for that portion of the site. He talks about parking spill. We're not going to have spill on ours within the outside of the property line with what we're going to do. Consider trees and plants around, showing plans, house trees. Project planning should be consideration impacts on the disruption of the area due to construction. The construction, I think we talked about last time, we're looking at Q1, Q2, Q3 of next year. We try to do some of the construction and the dust control that was discussed by the planner. We would coordinate that construction, so we work from the outer portion outward in terms of laydown and movement. I think he talked a little bit about circulation. When these fields are in use for school use, there is no extra traffic per se, and then there's ample parking behind. We're not really addressing any more additional parking. This is ample parking for any sort of field use while these are going on. And then there's a balancing that occurs with scheduling. Obviously, if you're using the softball field, you might not be using for full-time use the other 2 fields on site. That currently exists right now. So we feel that's going to be handled scheduling and the existing conditions of parking and circulation. Timing and completing the project. We're looking at next year to do this project if everything moves smoothly to get it on board, so we can get the students up with a new outdoor experience as quickly as possible. Activities and noise. I don't think the activity and noise will be any different than what's out there right now in terms of fields. Presence of people around with enhanced fields, possibly, but again, you have the fields out there. We don't know what the long-term benefits of that are going to be, but it is a school environment, so 90% of the time it's going to be school utilization of fields and impacts. I can't help you with that parking area or security. We can bring those needs to the Board of Education. I don't think it's acceptable that there's someone out there 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's some community policing that has to occur. We can bring those needs up with the proper authorities within the Board of Education or public safety for that. In terms of other questions, Mr. Post, did I miss anything? I don't want to miss anything, but we got it earlier and we went through a lot of it to try to make sure that we were addressing most of the stuff that you had on here within our presentation. I know I can't speak for property values. I talked about that near the end. I will say that historically property values are not affected by athletic fields or parks or schools near a property. They either maintain or increase in value, given that they are a resource in a community that is very well received. But I can't speak for property values. I am not a professional when it comes to that portion of the comments that were made.
Mr. Post, you have any quick follow-ups?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, having all of this, satisfactorily responded to, and thank you for that overview of sort of the gist of the responses that are coming. Thank you for that. That'll be helpful. I'm just confused in a way in that I know this is fantastic for the school to have, and for the school and school activities, during the school as well as after school. But I thought from the previous presentation that the intent here is that this is also going to be available to the larger community. It's not necessarily, these won't be amenities available at the high school. The lighting will enable, and the turf, benefits here than other places. So has any estimate been made or assessment been made of what the larger impact of being that having these amenities brings more people, more activities, longer than maybe a school related activity, but other than school activities. And so it makes it a hub, which is great, but that also is part of an environmental impact assessment in that it will reasonably, I think, attract more people, more activities, more other groups who want to use the fields, and after all, people pay for this. So if that's the case, I also want to know what the expectation is and what the assessment has been for the potential for increasing the activity load there, the people, the population, the movement in and out. And I think that's a reasonable question, and it should have been, or I'm sure it has been in some way assessed. I just need that more available or more visible to me, because I didn't see it in any of the materials that you had.
Yeah, I think a rebut to that would be that I'm just trying to look up some of the date. We realize it's an increase. This is part of this. Am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm talking to you. First and foremost, 182 plus days of the year is a school, and that school type of system, when it runs during normal operating hours of the middle school, and then that includes after school when they have prime locations, and sometimes even on the weekends, is still going to be the same operation that it is today. Like I said, first and foremost, it's run by the Board of Ed, Superintendent of Schools, and it acts as a school site. Are there opportunities between a certain time, let's say 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock during the evenings or on weekends, where it can be substituted for other community events? Absolutely. What this does do, it takes a little bit of that burden off of that synthetic field of the high school, but nonetheless, you're going to essentially have 3 fields, 2 here, 1 at the high school. And for some of that time, depending on scheduling, you're going to have the same activity on both of these fields, because you're not going to want to intermix them sometimes, or you'll have softball playing. So there'll be a good balance of that traffic moving in and out. And obviously its capacity is based on the capacity of the school itself during those off time hours. In terms of overall fields, I would invite you on the 17th of this month at 7 o'clock. We're going to be having the final public information meeting where we're analyzing fields all over town that this was a part of. That we went into this analysis to understand that the coverages have to be looked at not only here, but in other areas. This one rose to the top because of the fact that it is a school, and it was necessary that there was some deficiencies in the school where we could actually apply to these fields. So even if they weren't synthetic fields, they were going to be improved. And like I said, I think we should kind of shine that light, like you said earlier, Mr. Post, on the other benefits that we have on the site in terms of outdoor classroom, different both academic and physical activities that can be had on this site, and reiterate the fact that the balance of community need and school need has been met. But it's obviously leaning towards more the school need than the community need, in terms of days in the calendar and looking at how it's going to operate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Septuda. Okay. Any other comments from commission members or staff? Hearing none, then I think we'll close this matter as a public hearing, and it's something we can discuss in a bit. So thank you, everyone. That brings us then to our next item, which is item number 6 in our public hearings. This is 61 East Industrial Road. This is actually, it's listed on our agenda, but actually when we opened it, we continued to our next meeting on October 19th. So we don't even need, we can note that it's on our agenda, but we don't even need to reopen this one again because they have to get through wetlands, I think. And so I think that's been scheduled to be discussed at our next Zoom meeting on October 19th. So then continuing down, item number 7, which is Vincent Federico, applicant, Jennifer Federico, owner, 1819 Etzel Road. This is special exception modification and coastal site plan review for 6.8. And what's the status with this one, Harry or Evan?
Staff recommends that we open the public hearing and continue to the next P&Z Commission meeting. We received comments back from Deep this morning, so we can get our staff review done by next week and hear it on the 19th.
Okay. So if you're here on this one, this is 1819 Etzel Road. We're going to open this matter and we're going to continue this to our next meeting, which is on October 19th. Again, another Zoom meeting at the same Zoom address. So this matter is opened and continued. That's item number 7. That brings into item number 8, which is Julie Nedzwitzki, applicant owner, 35 Bayberry Lane, special exception for accessory apartment. And I understand we're going to open this one and also continue this to the 19th because they needed to file another application for an oversized apartment. So it would be prudent to consider those 2 applications together. So if we continue to the 19th, that one could be geared up to go then. Is that correct, Evan and Harry?
That's correct.
Okay. So for item number 8, then that matter, we've opened to continue that one also to our October 19th meeting. Again, another Zoom meeting at the same Zoom address at 7 p.m. Okay, that brings us then to our minutes from our September 21st meeting. I believe they were circulated. Does anyone have any corrections or additions for these? This again is our Thursday, September 21st, 2023 minutes.
Harry Smith, town planner. We did receive a couple of comments from one of the commission members in writing, and we can, at staff level, revise the minutes to address those and bring them back to you at the next meeting if that's acceptable.
Okay, so why don't we just table this one then, the acceptance of the minutes, since it looks like we need to make some revisions. So we will do that. And that brings us into correspondence. Any correspondence, Harry?
Harry Smith, town planner. No, we have no correspondence for this meeting.
Okay. So then let's go back to our public hearing items. And I guess the public hearing items that we had was the one that we just concerned, which is the athletic fields at Walsh. So I think we've heard some fairly extensive concerns by both the neighbors and, concerns about mainly lighting, drainage, and landscaping, possible noise, and the synthetic quality of the synthetic turf. I think those seem to have been addressed. I think there's questions maybe about the trees, how many we get, to provide some shielding. I guess before we go around, I think Evan had prepared a motion, but we'll just open it up to anyone that has comments, I guess. Well, who's Joe Chadwick is out, so who's sitting for
Yeah. I think Massimo is needed for another item further down the agenda. So it probably makes sense for him to do both. Sit in for Joe Chadwick for both the items.
Okay, so Massimo, you were at the public hearing for both of the last one in tonight, right? So,
Yes.
Okay, Massimo, so you're seated for deliberations on this, so, you know, you can comments during deliberation. So anyone, Fred, have any comments?
Well, I didn't hear, I heard a lot of good, legitimate concerns. You know, at best there was questionable concerns, but there was no, I don't know, scientific concerns about what was going to be used. Dominic said that the field over at the middle school is, I don't know if the same one or similar, and I think the lighting as well. So it's not like this the first time it's coming into town. I think as a town, we probably have a track record of knowing whether we like it or not. And I know that Alex Paluzzi is on the you know, here on the Zoom, and I think that if it, and I think he's a very good director. If he had any real concerns, I don't think he would bring this to the forefront like he's done. So I can't find anything really negative. I understand what's being said. I'm sensitive to it, but I think we sort of have to trust the people that are in charge, either installing or in managing all this stuff once it's installed. And hopefully it doesn't have the effect that has been perceived. We don't know if it's going to ever happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I thought the applicant made a good presentation, fair points, and I think that I would be inclined to vote for it in favor of it.
Great. Chuck Anderson, thank you, Fred. Joe Viuzzo, any thoughts?
No, not really, not a whole lot. I think, again, like Fred said, the applicant did a really good job presenting all the concerns. And the only, and I still have a little concern about the lighting, but lighting can be adjusted. I think once it's up and running, if there's an issue, I'm sure they can tweak it a little bit here and there. It's not something that cannot be adjusted. So I'm not too concerned about that. And all the other stuff that they did, talked about with landscaping and trees and all that, they're addressing it as best they can. And again, if there's an issue with it needed a couple extra trees or for screening or whatever, that could be done at a later date. Right now, I do the best I can with what we have right now, and tweak it if we have to down the road. But I'm good with it, with what they proposed.
Great. Chuck Anderson, thank you, Joe. Marcy?
Hi, I apologize for my dog. I think my son's about to walk in. I am very familiar with athletic turf fields. I've done a lot of them. I just want to commend Dominic on his presentation. I think he really, went above and beyond considering the natural environment and the effects of water as it leaves and protecting the environment. I know all the arguments for and against. Sorry about that. But I have to say, there's an efficiency with the turf fields. We have a lot of other sites in town. We use all the sites, and, it's important to support our children and to encourage them to get off of the computer, to encourage them to be playing in extracurricular activities. And, to have it at the school is only logical. I certainly am empathetic to Dr. Post's, I'm sorry about that, Dr. Post's concerns. I know where he's located. I sell real estate, so I know that house had been on the market recently, and I'm having, unfortunately, to compare one person to many. So I think we're doing everything prudent to look at the light levels, to use the current technology. Yes, there's going to be traffic on and off the site, but there was always traffic on and off the site. There was always a school there. There was always sports happening there. And, it would have been unreasonable to, not anticipate that. But I do think that this plan is good. I think you could have proposed a formal running track that would have much more impact. And instead they focused on the school programming. I thought that was very helpful. I do hearken on what Massimo was saying last week about a concession. I think that's important. I think that would have been a valuable add to the project, whether they propose that now or later. I don't see that as having impact. I would love to see that. added to the project or our approval for that in the project. But, again, it's, the overall public good, and how to balance development. We need these things in our communities, and we're trying to support the full community, and we're trying to do it in a way that uses natives and protects the environment and, controls the runoff and all of these things. And, they've done their due diligence, and I believe they've been through inland wetlands, and wetlands approved the project. So, I have to, give them kudos for the work they've put into it.
Chuck and Chair, thank you, Marcy. And I agree. I think the applicant did a thorough job of presenting it, addressing the issues, looking. It sounds like this isn't the first athletic field that they've been involved in, so they kind of know the field. They seem to be very astute about the lighting nuances, and appeared to address and also concern, as Marcy just mentioned, that this is a middle school primarily. It is an existing middle school, an existing athletic fields too. This is a brand new thing. And I thought, frankly, Mr. Post raised some good points too. And I'm glad, I thought it was an intelligent letter that he wrote, and that the applicant I'm glad that the applicant was able to address that. I thought the responses were fair. Hope Mr. Post goes to the continuing discussion about the use issue, because I think that's fair. That's out there. And the other thing is, I think Evan mentioned this, that we also had our town engineer look at the drainage question from Mr. Post's letter, and he also submitted some comments that basically said that he thought it was okay, and there were some specifics to that as well. So I'm in favor of it. So I think maybe the next step then is to there was one question about whether they complied with the regulations of the regarding uplighting, because remember, for the footballs and the fly balls, some lighting points up, and our regulations say you can't have uplighting. But so what do you do about that? So my reading is that is part of our general regulations, but then there's another section in the regulations that gives exceptions to that. For example, for flag lighting, which it says, you can have some uplighting there for American flags at night, and it provides certain things. So there's also an exception for outdoor sports lighting, and I think the criteria given in there, they satisfy that criteria, so that we don't have to do like we did at Amazon and say, they come within some different category, because the regulations themselves provide an exception for sports lighting under that criteria, which they appeared to satisfy. So I'm okay with that. And I think that was one of the alternatives that Evan had mentioned. So Evan, maybe what you can do is pull up your resolution. I think there was some question about, where's that screening going to be? Where's the additional trees, and how do we phrase that? So anyway, that's kind of what I was thinking we could talk about. So Evan, you want to review this with us then?
Yeah, sure. So we did have the two findings. I think Chuck just gave a little explanation for why he felt that the second finding was more appropriate, and that section 6.7 D4 sort of provided some relief for sports lighting.
Do you agree with that? I don't want to just say, hey, Chuck thinks it, so of course, how could anyone disagree? So does everyone else agree?
Fred Russo, I agree.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else?
Massimo Ligori, I definitely agree.
Okay. Massimo. Joe, you agree?
Ayuso agrees.
Yeah, Marcy?
Marcy agrees.
Okay, good. So we'll go with that second, delete that one, and go with the second one. So
sure. Do you want me to review this again?
okay. What are I think we let's go over the conditions, just summarize them quickly. And stop.
Sure.
Right, yeah.
So prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the applicant shall amend the landscape plan to include a line of 5 or more native trees across the length of the parking lot. The species shall be chosen for the purposes of trying to screen as much lighting from the properties across the street as possible. And this would be with some consultation from the superintendent of schools to make sure that these trees and their locations while trying to accomplish that original goal. Won't stand in the way of anything that the school would like to do. Condition number 2, prior to the start.
Well, stop right there. Just is everyone okay with that? Marcy, is that good? I mean, what do you think?
No, well, it's good, but I'd like to add some clarity.
Sure.
I think it should say broadleaf shade tree, reaching a minimum height of 50 to 100 feet. I'm not sure if there's utility lines in there. I mean, obviously it would be better to propose a street tree, but that would be an issue against the street. But I think, you want to propose a broadleaf to a larger leafed, like a maple or something along those lines. That's, not a, I'm trying to think of the common name. Let's see. The thorn, a honey locust, which are often used in parking lots because they survive well around the parking areas. And this is sort of the trick I'm struggling with the native tree discussion. But, I think you need to select a tree that's going to be a large shade tree, that's going to have larger leaves to block the light, but also will survive near the parking lot where you're going to be prone to some salts and, pollution in the parking lot.
So how do we phrase that, Marcy?
I would just say a large deciduous tree, minimum 50-foot mature height.
Yeah.
And then let the landscape architects do the research to see if you can find a suitable native one that would, survive in a parking lot situation and, give that kind of leaf cover to block light. Because oftentimes, we would use the thornless honey locust because it doesn't drop a lot of leaves. It's not a messy tree near a parking lot. But, I think a smaller leaf tree is going to not give you the light filtration that you're going to want to see. So, but I would leave it up to Dominic. I mean, that's why I think we need to have more landscape architects in the regulation, not try to overregulate the regulations, but that's another discussion.
Okay.
Harry Smith, town planner. I mean, since it's left to staff, I'm perfectly happy taking that direction, Marcy, and I've noted it all down. If that's sufficient for the commission, I mean, you can specify as well everything Marcy said if you want to wordsmith it, but just put it out there that, we would certainly defer to everything Marcy just said and work with a landscape architect on the project and then consult with Board of Ed and the Superintendent's office about selections as well.
Okay, so the suggestion is Harry's taking notes. That's what he's going to work with, so we don't necessarily need to put it in the resolution. Is that what your suggestion?
That's if the commission's comfortable with that. I mean, we can sit down and take the time and wordsmith it too, if you like. Up to you guys.
What do you think, Marcy?
I think we have other things that we could be working on than trying to grammatically.
Okay, so we'll leave it. I trust Harry usually follows our recommendations. So.
Usually.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and there is a broad recommendation in there anyway. So okay. Yeah. So okay, then we'll just leave it like that. But Harry's taking notes and you could actually talk to Marcy when we get there too.
Sure.
So okay, the other ones, Evan, I think you can, these were pretty standard, I think, right?
Yeah, erosion control measures shall be installed. The lighting shall be turned off after the end of the sporting events and or no later than 1 hour after that event ends, as may be directed by the CEO, the town planner, the zoning enforcement officer, the town planner, or his designee. Necessary measures to control dust or erosion shall be installed during construction, and all conditions of the previous approvals shall remain in full force and effect.
Great. Okay, then. So I think we've got the draft resolution here. So does someone want to make a motion to adopt the findings and conditions and adopt the staff resolution as amended, standing right before us that we're looking at as our decision of approval?
Chuck, Massimo Ligori here.
Yes.
If I may just step in for one moment.
Sure.
If I'm not mistaken, the daughter, the house that's right near the field or the school, and the applicant, while they were speaking, if I'm not mistaken, they did come to some sort of buffering agreement between that house and the and the school. Should that be part of that condition, or am I correct on that?
No, I wouldn't. What I would say is, Harry, why don't you invite Mr. Post to comment on this? I think my understanding is, yeah, they'd be willing to discuss them with them, but yeah, why don't we get Mr. Post in there?
Sure.
Conversation. So that'll be part of that. I mean, that's what I would do. I don't want to necessarily give any third party a veto necessarily. So, but I like the idea of inviting them to, comment when we get there. So.
Yep, I can do that. No problem.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone? Not then, if someone want to make a motion to approve the application by adopting the staff findings and conditions as revised.
Fred Russo, I make a motion that we accept the findings, conditions, and resolutions by the staff report.
Okay, motion made to approve by Fred. Is there a second?
Marcy seconds.
Second, Marcy. Any further discussion?
Harrison Town Planner, can I just clarify? We're talking about the two number one findings, the second one. So the first one's already crossed out. I can see that now. Sorry.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. So it's as shown on the screen, basically, right?
Right.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Do we want to give any thought to allowing a concession stand in the future, or are we going to make them go back through the process should that come up?
I think it could possibly be done as a minor, and I would probably bring that to the commission to see what your preference would be. So that would be a way to do it. Without having any idea of where it might be proposed, I think you probably wouldn't want to add it to this approval, would be my recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Maybe we'll see where it is and so forth. Okay, so motion's been made, and I think there was a second, right? Did someone second? Marcy, you seconded.
Yeah. Marcy.
Okay. All those in favor. Fred
Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuso.
Joe in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo.
Massimo's in favor.
And Chair's also in favor. So resolution is adopted. Okay, so let's go then to old business. So our first item of old business is the zoning regulation amendment regarding landscaping, where we had multiple public hearings. Harry, I know there's been a lot of time put in this, both by the volunteer applicants, Shirley McCarthy, Peter Henschel, and staff. Harry, you worked a lot on this as well. And there's a lot to it, and there's been a lot of tweaks and whatever. Do you have a recommendation of how we should go about reviewing these?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I think at the last meeting, when we closed the public hearing, I think there was some discussion about having a special meeting, recognizing there's a lot to unpack here. And I guess that would be my recommendation, is to take some time, maybe a 2-hour special meeting, and provide some opportunity for the whole commission and myself to walk through the whole thing and get into it section by section. And because there is a lot of tiny little changes, a lot of bigger changes, and there's a couple of items that seem to have been the focus of some of the comments, but I don't want some of the details to get lost also. And, it might be kind of thing where the commission may want to go down to that pretty detailed level and look at all these items and decide yes, no, change. And I'm certainly happy to put the time in a special meeting to take the commission through that, so everyone's as clear as possible on what's in front of them, and can that way decide what the commission collectively wants to do, and feel like you've really examined it closely. So we could do something like that. We have a potential date of October 26th, which is a Thursday after the next meeting on the 19th. We can look at other dates. We don't want to let it go too long because commission's got to make a decision by, frankly, around Thanksgiving. So, does that sound reasonable? Is there any other ideas, or how do you want to go?
Well, I'll start. I'm fine with that. I mean, even if we end up, we could adopt it as is, we could reject the whole thing, but I think it just deserves attention given the amount of effort that everyone's put into it. So I think having a special meeting is appropriate. So, Fred, what do you think?
I'm fine with a special meeting. I'm okay with
it. Joe Ayuso?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, but I would, for me, the 26th would be the best date. November will be a little tough for me.
Okay, yeah, the 26th of this month. Okay. Marcy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we really do need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and discuss it point by point. I think there's a lot of other far-reaching ramifications to a lot of other parties that, it's hard to, go and address the way we have. So I'm sorry, my dog again is being very rambunctious. But yeah, no, I can certainly do a special meeting to give it its due attention, which it deserves.
Okay. Massimo?
Yeah, I'm with that 100%. I'm doing a special meeting. I think that the intricacy of this project is pretty severe. It's pretty deep, and I think we should definitely add some special attention to it and comb through it and see what's best.
Okay. So does October 26th? That's the fourth Thursday, I guess. Does that work for people?
Let's see. October 25th. What do we got here? 25th. The 25th or the 26th?
26th.
26th.
Is a Thursday.
Yeah, 26th. Okay.
Right.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Fred's good. I think Joe Ayuso, you said you could make it. Marcy, can you make that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And Massimo and Sharon, can you make that? I don't know I don't know if Joe Chad will be back or who's going to be around, but can you both make that in case?
The 26th is okay for me.
Okay.
And the 26th is also fine for me also.
Okay, so let's we'll have a special meeting on that for the 26th. Great.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll table that one for now to our special meeting on October 26th. Brings then to our next item, which is the re-subdivision application at 667682 Totoket Road and 0 Tweed Road. That was the re-subdivision to create 4 lots from 3 existing properties. That was when we closed the public hearing at our last meeting, and there were a few things. I think, Evan, there were some last minute changes. You wanted to, actually go over them and review them. And I think there was also this interesting sort of back and forth by the engineers about the, what was it? It was a stormwater issue about whether you use the soils, the test pits to measure the soil permeability, or do you just the soil type. And I don't think it wasn't determinative because it could have worked either way, but that was something that I thought it would be helpful, given that we had 2 experts who are sort of disagreeing, to have our own town engineer weigh in on that as well. So anyway, Evan or Harry, I think Evan, you got this one, right?
Yeah, I guess I'll start off with that engineering issue. I sent off to the commission earlier today comments from our town engineer after you guys had asked him to weigh in on a neighboring property owner's engineer's concerns. I think at the end of the day, he recommended a condition to essentially allow the applicant to reevaluate, recalculate the adequacy of that drainage basin. But let me get into my staff report, or my final staff report. And we did add a condition concerning that issue. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
All right. So essentially there was 12 outstanding questions or items at the last meeting that I was able to write a staff report for. The applicant provided answers to all of those items with the exception of 3. So I think I'll start with those 3 issues. Section 3(2)A reads, any subdivision shall be designed and arranged, and provision shall be made to avoid unnecessary or unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction of natural resources. Staff had asked the applicant to clarify what existing vegetation is proposed to remain, and to show what vegetated areas are proposed to stay on the plans through the use of a limited disturbance. The applicant had provided these areas, what they labeled in their response to my comments as areas to remain undisturbed on their soil erosion control plan. However, they did not provide the amount of vegetated land that is proposed to be cleared. So we added some conditions that I'll go over later about this issue. The second item was the significant trees on the property. The applicant added the significant trees that we had requested in a previous staff report. However, they failed to note which of these would be proposed to be remaining or be removed. So we also added a condition that would require them to amend that sheet as well. Next up, let's see, section 3(7). We had asked them to amend the grading to meet the requirements of section 6.8, specifically the 3:1 grading requirement. They did amend the majority of the areas that were not met. However, we still spotted 1 or 2 more. So we added a condition that would require this prior to the signing of the Mylar by the chair of the commission. They did add street trees to the plans. The driveway requirements have now been met, specifically the grading within 35 feet of the roadway being less than 8%. They provided documentation from the East Shore Health District for an approval of the septic systems proposed on their plans, as well as an approval from the Regional Water Authority for connection to their systems. The town engineer provided comments on the drainage conditions, and a condition has been added that would require the applicant to verify the adequacy of the drainage basin. Those were the outstanding remaining items. On to our criteria for approval and staff recommendations. The commission can choose to disapprove, approve, or modify, improve the application. Conditions are proposed below. We only have one finding, and that's that the coastal site plan is consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Area Management Act. On to our conditions. Number 1, the following items shall be addressed and or added to the record subdivision map to the satisfaction of the town planner or his designee prior to the signature of the chairperson and recording of the record subdivision map. Number 1, or A, the applicant shall remove the signature box that states final approval / no financial guarantee required on sheet 2 and replace it with the signature block depicted on sheets or in section 6.2C2 that states final approval, financial guarantee provided. B, submittal of a soil and erosion control financial guarantee in favor of the town of Branford pursuant to section 6.8F1 of form, content, and amount as determined by the town planner or zoning enforcement officer, as may be advised by the town engineer and or attorney, except that this financial guarantee shall not be in the form of a surety bond. C, the applicant shall revise the proposed grading on sheet 4 to be compliant with section 6.8 of the town of Branford zoning regulations. D, the applicant shall amend sheet 3 entitled site plan to indicate which of the 20 significant trees that they provided are proposed to be removed or which are proposed to remain. E, the applicant shall revise the erosion control plan to label each of the enclosed hatch areas as to remain. On the submitted plans, they had only labeled one of them as to remain. Condition 2, a fee in lieu of open space payment or space dedication of 10% of the total area of the subdivision is required prior to the recording of the record subdivision map. The procedure for determining the amount of fee in lieu payment shall be in accordance with section 8-25 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The required appraisal shall be performed by a Connecticut licensed appraiser who has been certified as a member of the Appraisal Institute, or MAI. The appraiser must be also jointly selected by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall review and approve the appraisal report. Condition 3, the applicant shall submit 1 Mylar along with 3 paper copies of the record subdivision map with appropriate signature blocks and required modifications. Condition 4, as may be directed by the town planner or his designee, necessary measures to control any dust generated by fill brought into the site or movement of earth material on site shall be implemented, and any additional measures to control soil or erosion determined to be necessary to address conditions during construction. And the final condition, any clearing of vegetation, regrading, or construction of any kind within those hatched areas labeled areas to remain undisturbed, shown on sheet 6, entitled Erosion Control Plan, is prohibited and shall require approval from the Town of Branford Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Evan. Any questions or comments from anyone? Gary? You're muted.
Yeah, I unmuted myself. Apologies. Just on the financial guarantee for stormwater of the soil erosion and sedimentation control. I just want to be clear that Evans recommended this be, I believe, established by staff. And I think just the adoption of the condition in the subdivision approval is the commission requiring the financial guarantee. So there is a provision in the subdivision regulations that states the commission may require the subdivider to provide a financial guarantee to ensure installation of maintenance of soil erosion sedimentation controls. So I just want to be clear that by approving the subdivision with this condition, the commission's basically requiring that's your action step under the regs. And we're just sort of doing the detailed implementation of that.
Are you referring to 1A or
think further back.
1B.
Oh, I'm sorry. 1B.
B. Yeah, 1B.
Okay. Just to clarify.
Yep.
Okay. So no changes. You're just clarifying that, right?
No, just clarifying so the commission's aware that basically in adopting it, you establish the bond recommendation of staff in amounts. So at this point, you're just basically delegating to staff to go through that process. And you're saying, yeah, we need a bond for this. And whatever it is, the technical details of all that will just be handled by staff.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Not, does someone make a motion to modify and approve the application by adopting the findings and conditions in the final staff report that Evan just read to us?
Joe moves to approve with all the changes that you just mentioned.
Okay, motion made by Joe Viuzzo. Is there a second?
Fred Russo seconds.
Second by Fred. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Fred.
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Viuzzo.
Joe in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo.
Massimo's in favor.
And chair is also in favor. So that application is approved. So that's off our agenda. Item number 3 is a Wells Fargo application, 840 Main Street. What's the status of that one?
The applicant has granted an extension to the October 19th meeting, so we recommend continuing to that meeting.
Okay, so we'll table that one to our October 19th meeting. Number 4, Tara Knight, that's 297 Linden Avenue, a coastal site plan. And I understand we're waiting for DEP comments on that one.
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll table item number 4. Item number 5 looks like an island, and we have a public hearing scheduled for our next meeting, 19th. We're gonna have a lot of things on it once again. So item number 5 is on for the 19th. Brings us then to the new business, and it looks like item number one is the indoor-outdoor pickleball paddle courts, and that's scheduled for a public hearing on the 19th. Again, a busy meeting. And also number 2, an oversized accessory structure, 35 Bayberry Lane. I think that's going to go with the other one, item number 8 of the public hearing. So we'll consider those together, and that's on for the 19th. And then there's a new one that's, I guess, 5 Spice Bush Lane, Matt, whoever that, Sahin Tepe, special exception for grading. And I guess we'll never probably need to schedule that one for a public hearing, probably in November, I suppose. Does that sound right?
Harry Smith, town planner, yes.
Okay. That brings us into other business. The first item is the 824 referral for the field improvements at the Walsh Intermediate School. Again, we just approved the application, but because it's a substantial improvement, or potentially a substantial improvement to a town property under General Statutes 824, as a planning commission, we're supposed to give a quote report to the Board of Selectmen, and I think all we have to do is say it's a favorable report. Is that your understanding, Harry?
Harry Smith, town planner, that is correct. My understanding as well. Typically, staff brings to the commission for its consideration any comments we find in the plan of conservation development about it. A lot of the items that do come up and get referred, however, more specific than the plan, and that's the case here. I just flipped through the plan and could find nothing in the community facilities section or other sections that speaks to field improvements or lighting or synthetic fields versus natural. So there's really nothing in there except general statement of continuing to maintain and improve the town's facilities, which this is, but there's nothing specific about it.
Okay, so it's we find it consistent with the plan of conservation development, and we can issue a positive report under General Statutes 824.
Sure.
So we'll make a motion to issue a positive referral under General Statutes 824 and finding of consistency with the plan of conservation development with respect to this Walsh Intermediate School field improvement.
Fred Russo makes that motion, so approved.
Motion by Fred. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Marcy. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Fred?
Fred's in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo?
Massimo's in favor.
Chair's also in favor. So the next item is a 90-day time extension for the filing of a re-subdivision plans for 175 Cherry Hill Road with the town clerk.
Harry Smith, town planner. I'm sure the commission recalls this is a subdivision proposed up at the end of Autumn Ridge, a property that extends down to the very end of the developed portion of Cherry Hill Road, approved by the commission several months ago. The applicant's engineer has been working away on revising the plans, and they're just about finalized. However, there are several typical steps that need to be taken to complete a subdivision, including providing a financial guarantee. And I believe the subdivider's attorney is still working on a lot of those. So they're running out of time. The 90-day extension they did receive is running out in a few weeks. So they've requested an additional 90 days, which is provided for by statute. So the commission can go ahead and grant that, and hopefully they will wrap it up by the end of the additional 90 days.
Great. So someone make a motion to approve a 90-day time extension for the filing of the re-subdivision plans for 175 Cherry Hill Road. Motion to approve by Joe Vayuso, grant that 90-day extension. Is there a second?
Marcy, I'll second.
Second by Marcy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Fred?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo?
Massimo's in favor.
Chair's also in favor. Number 3, planners report. What's happening?
Quite a bit at this point. I'll just focus on the training. There's been some discussion on the planners listserv about that event. I think 3 of the commissioners attended at used to be held at Wesleyan, run by the Bar Association. And my understanding that even though on the website, the Bar Association says that the Saturday session covered 3 of the general hours. Again, 4 hours of training are required, 3 general hours and 1 specific to affordable housing. That session covered the 3 general hours and a half of an hour of affordable housing. Other folks on the listserv have said that the affordable housing sessions went longer than anticipated and really extended over a full hour. I'll try to verify some of that. I mean, there is a training session at SCROG coming up that I sent information around about. But I believe at this point that the 3 commissioners who went to the Wesleyan session, in quotes, probably fulfilled their obligations. There is something I saw on the listserv today I will send around about an affordable housing, some kind of training towards New London, just in case you want to be absolutely sure. And I would strongly encourage commission members who haven't done anything to consider the SCROG training. I believe there are a couple options. I'll get myself more up to speed on that, and we will endeavor to very shortly provide feedback to the commissioners about what we have on our list of what everyone's done, and the goal being that everyone's gotten through the 4 hours by the end of the calendar year. So we'll get back to you about what we've got on our list of what everyone's done. So hopefully get that current and get everyone aware of what they may need to still do.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thanks, Harry. That SCROG one is a week from today. It's next Thursday. I think it may be taped as well, but I think Harry said it. It has an affordable housing. I think it has a reading of site plans and some other things. Anything else, Harry?
I don't have anything at the moment. Evan, is there anything you'd like to bring up?
Nope.
Okay.
Anyone else have anything?
And I will schedule a special meeting for the 26th based on discussion.
Yeah, the landscaping regs for the 26th.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, that would be a deliberation session, so that it's an open public meeting, but only the commissioners sitting on the application could talk.
Right. Okay, anything, no one else from anyone, or someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Fred Russo, I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned made by Fred. Is there a second?
Massimo Ligori, I second.
Second by Massimo. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Fred?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
All in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo?
Massimo's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor, so we're adjourned.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.